It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, a man who killed a couple before putting their bodies into suitcases and trying to dump them from the Clifton Suspension Bridge is found guilty of murder. Justin Andres Mosquera killed Paul Longworth and Albert Alfonso at their flat in West London in July last year. Police say he wanted the couple's money. Also ahead tonight, the UK joins 24 other countries in calling for an immediate end to the war in Gaza. They say the suffering of civilians has reached new depths. David Lammy telling the Commons today that Israel is presiding over a grotesque spectacle. Plus, the water regulator set to be abolished as part of government plans to fix the sector. But there will be no renationalisation. And I'll be joined in the studio by the divers who found a Royal Navy warship sunk during the First World War and lost for 110 years. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. First tonight, a man who killed a couple before putting their bodies in suitcases and trying to dump them from the Clifton Suspension Bridge has been found guilty of their murders. 35-year-old Justin Andres Mosquera killed 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and his civil partner Paul Longworth, who was 71, at their flat in West London in July last year. 2 days later, he hired a man and a van to take him and their bodies to Bristol. A warning that this report from our correspondent Alice Porter includes details that some viewers may find distressing.
In the dead of night, Justin Mosquera drags a suitcase towards Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. One of two bags he claimed contained car parts. Instead, they were filled with human remains of two men he'd killed in London before transporting them across the country. His victims, a man he'd first met online, 62-year-old Albert Alfonso, and his civil partner, 71-year-old Paul Longworth. They all became friends. The couple visited Mosquera in Colombia, where he lived, and flew the 35-year-old, who was a porn star, to the UK to stay with them in London, while Alfonso and Mosquera would engage in extreme sex. These videos, played in court, show the three men in the weeks and days before the murders. The prosecution argued Mosquera was already planning the attacks. His laptop revealed online searches for fatal blows to the head. It was here in Shepherd's Bush in West London where the murders took place, in a flat which was shared by the couple. On the 8th of July, Mosquera killed Paul Longworth by hitting him over the head with a hammer. Later, during a sex session, Mosquera stabbed Albert Alfonso multiple times with a knife, killing him. Mosquera then decapitated the bodies. CCTV shows a freezer being delivered where the heads were stored. The other remains were put in suitcases. A van with a driver hired to transport Mosquera and the bags to the bridge in Bristol 2 days after the murders. Mosquera eventually dumped the cases on the bridge. When passers-by became suspicious, he ran off and police were called.
The case is broken and it looks like it's really heavy and there's blood coming out of it.
3 days after that, Mosquera was arrested at Bristol Temple Meads train station.
What happened? Move your legs out to the front. Sit up.
At this time, mate, you're under arrest on suspicion of murder.
Evidence in the cases led police to the London flat. They discovered the hammer used to kill Mr. Longworth and the freezer with the victims' heads. In court, Mosquera claimed that Mr. Alfonso had repeatedly raped him, denying both murders, but admitting manslaughter of Alfonso by loss of control. But police found multiple video recordings of Mosquera calmly killing Alfonso, contradicting his story.
The video that we found of the murder is really shocking. Within seconds of the murder, he appears to dance, sings a short song, and immediately after that, whilst Mr. Alfonso is still lying on the floor, he's straight on the computer and starts searching for going into financial accounts and logging into bank accounts, etc.
Mosquera would try to steal money from Albert Alfonso as he lay dying. It was a grotesque end for these lifelong partners who, unknowingly, let a killer into their home. Alice Porter, Sky News.
The UK and 24 other countries have called for an immediate end to the war in Gaza. They say the suffering of civilians has reached new depths and accused Israel of presiding over a grotesque spectacle, drip-feeding aid and depriving Gazans of human dignity. Israel says the statement is disconnected from reality, but Foreign Secretary David Lammy told the Commons earlier that the country must be held to account.
I utterly condemn the killing of civilians seeking to meet their basic needs. The Israeli government must answer what possible military justification can there be for strikes that have killed desperate, starving children? What immediate actions are they taking to stop this litany of horrors? And what will they do to hold those responsible to account?
Well, for more reactions to this, our political correspondent Liz Bates joins me now. And Liz, will this move the dial?
Well, it's certainly a ramping up of the rhetoric, Sarah-Jane. I think that is what came across very strongly today from the Foreign Secretary in the House of Commons. Prior to that, the Prime Minister at the Liaison Committee grilled about lots of different things, but one of those issues that really stood out was what he said on Gaza, because he said that the UK considered the situation on the ground, particularly in relation to aid and the delivery of aid and the way that civilians were being targeted, and to the removal of people from the area, the forced resettlement. The Prime Minister saying that is completely intolerable, and once again making this case for a ceasefire. And you saw there David Lammy in the House of Commons really laying down the gauntlet to Israel and really laying the lack of progress on dialing down hostilities in the region, laying it firmly at the door of Benjamin Netanyahu. So quite a ramping up of rhetoric, as I said. This comes on the back of a joint statement alongside 25 international allies. All of those points were reiterated in that statement. It said, we call on the Israeli government to immediately lift restrictions on the flow of aid. It also goes on at the end, we are prepared to take further action to support an immediate ceasefire and a political pathway to security and peace for Israelis. So the almost implicit threat there, we are prepared to go further. Earlier today, the Prime Minister did point to, because he was pressed on what the UK is actually doing to move things forward in the region, and he pointed to sanctions and to UK action on arms to the Israelis. But I think important to note as well that the United States is not signed up to this joint statement. And of course, if there is anybody that has the ability to influence Israel in this conflict, it is the United States. So that is still a difficulty in the way that the UK and other international allies have split from the United States in the way that they want to put pressure on the Israeli government. But no doubt today, a fresh push alongside international allies from the UK. The PM and the Foreign Secretary joined up in their messaging. The question, is it being heard in Israel? Well, the Israelis did issue a statement in response in which they said that they reject the joint statement published by a group of countries as it is disconnected from reality and sends the wrong message to Hamas and ends at these sensitive moments in the ongoing negotiations. It is better to avoid statements of this kind. So unequivocal batting away of the joint statement by Israel, as we've seen many times. So I think the question of whether these voices louder and louder on the international stage, are they being heard in Israel? Well, from that statement, it seems like not at the moment.
OK, Liz, thank you, Liz Bates, for the latest there from Westminster. The water regulator Ofwat is to be scrapped as part of plans to fix the sector. A review commissioned by the government made 88 recommendations today amid growing public outrage over sewage spills, underinvestment in infrastructure and hosepipe bans. Our business correspondent Paul Kelso has this report.
When it rains, we know what pours from storm overflows, sewage mixed with wastewater straight into our rivers. A legacy of an ageing system and decades of underinvestment that a review now promises to address. Its author comparing today's metaphorical mess to the great stink that triggered the Victorian sewer revolution.
If we are to achieve the water sector we need to look at all the factors that have contributed to our great stink, moment. And the water industry, of course, is at the heart of this. And the industry as a whole has not met public expectations or maintained public trust in recent years.
The key recommendation accepted by government, replacing Ofwat with a single body responsible for economic and environmental regulation.
What we're doing is getting rid of the gaps in regulation by bringing the functions from 4 separate regulators together in one new super regulator, ensuring that they have the teeth they need to enforce against what water companies are doing wrong.
Public anger at pollution is matched by concern over executive pay and dividends, while investors cite the plight of Thames Water in danger of collapse as evidence the sector has become too risky. With nationalisation ruled out from the start, Bank of England veteran Sir John says stronger regulation and clearer direction from government is the answer.
I think when companies are delivering what they're set up to do, when the private interests of the shareholders are lined up with the public interests in producing water, sanitation, respecting the environment, those returns will come out. And whether it's publicly owned or privately owned, there will need to be borrowing to finance this, and borrowing costs go up.
With the government having ruled out nationalising water companies, that leaves only the reality of a privatised system. The investment required to cut sewage, reduce leaks, improve water quality and future-proof infrastructure against climate change and population growth will only come if those companies are profitable and pay a return to investors. And only customers can pay for that. For some campaigners, that's simply unacceptable.
Until we look at privatisation and the end of it, we will never see true transition. We need to look to Europe and America, learn from them, and then put this industry back into special administration, if you like, starting with Thames Water and removing the profit motive, replacing it with public benefit and environmental performance.
Creating the new water regulator could take 2 years. Refloating public confidence, longer still. Paul Kelso, Sky News.
Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Professor Ewan McGahey, a Professor of Law at King's College London, who sits on the panel of the People's Commission on the Water Sector, a separate commission to the one that brought out that report today. But you'd have liked to have been part of that report, I am sure. Let's talk about the headline recommendation and the bit that the government seems to be willing to put into action, first of all, which is getting rid of Ofwat. Now what, if you see what I mean? If you get rid of Ofwat, what should replace it?
Super regulator is what the government has said is going to replace Ofwat, and that'll combine some of the functions of the Drinking Water Inspectorate, the Environment Agency, but really they're going to have, according to the Cunliffe report, the same basic duty to secure returns for shareholders and banks in the law. That's still going to be a part under these plans of the new super regulator. So really this is just sort of like old sewage in new bottles. It's not really doing the fundamental change which is needed to get what everybody wants, which is clean water, fair bills, and a system that works not for profit but for the public interest.
Yeah, the fear is swapping like for like. There are 88 recommendations announced today. Renationalisation wasn't one of them, as Paul Kelso was explaining in his report there. That wasn't part of the report's remit. Yet should it have been, because public ownership is supported by 82% of the British public, according to the latest YouGov poll. I think that was a big miss there.
That's right, and 90% of the world has water in public ownership. Berlin brought its water back from privatised hands in 2013, done better for it. Paris did the same in 2009. And that's because when you have shareholders and banks profiting from our water bills, now around a third of our bills are going to service debt to banks. That means that the money isn't going into infrastructure. So Sir John Cunliffe was just wrong about saying that shareholder interests can be aligned with the public interest. They're diametrically opposed. Water is a natural monopoly. There can't be any competition. We can't switch our water provider. And so that means that so long as you've got private profit in the system, you've got less good outcomes. And that's why England has some of the worst bathing quality in Europe. It has the worst, or some of the worst surface water quality outcomes, our rivers, beaches, lakes in Europe. And this is the nettle that has not been grasped by Sir John Cunliffe or the government.
Yeah, the report was pretty close, wasn't it? It was limited to stakeholders involved in the sector, no involvement from the public. the consumer. And we know that our bills are going to go up by around 36% over the next 5 years, which has made people angry because a lot of them are saying, why? We're not getting any better service. In fact, it's declining. And some water companies, actually, the people that pay their bills to them are actually paying off some of their debt. So do you think it was a big miss not to have the public involved in this?
Absolutely. And nobody's going to shed a tear for Ofwat, which is being abolished, because they were responsible for this decision, putting our bills up by 36%, as you say, in the next 5 years. Also, Ofwat doubled the amount that's going to shareholders and banks in the next 5 years, from 11 billion to 22 billion in profit. And Ofwat...
Would they not have argued that they would have to do that in order to... maintain the status quo, which, people would argue is far too low. But in terms of putting those bills up, if they didn't, the water companies essentially would collapse. Did they have much of a choice off what, really?
Some water companies are going to collapse anyway, even with these enormous bill rises, particularly Thames Water. And the other thing that Ofwat and the government are not doing is putting failed companies like Thames Water, which are pretty much insolvent, got the worst pollution records, into what's called special administration. That's just making them lose their licences so that these companies can transition into a different ownership structure. That's one of the things that the government could do right now if it wanted. Just like Railtrack failed and it got transferred to the publicly owned Network Rail, we could do the same with our water companies.
But public ownership, essentially, again, it's the consumer, it's the customer that is going to pay for those companies' mistakes. I noticed that Reform's Nigel Farage said the other day that Labour should let failing water companies go bust. They deserve to lose their money, not get a bailout. Because while the public do support water companies being taken back into public ownership, essentially they're just going to be punished again. You're paying for those mistakes. So do you think Nigel Farage has a bit of a point there? What would happen if the Labour government were to just let those water companies go bust?
What would happen is that the government would take control. It would replace the board of directors, and like Railtrack...
The shareholders wouldn't get any money, though, would it? It wouldn't get any public money, which I guess is Nigel Farage's point. You would be paying for it twice.
If a companies go bust, the shareholders definitely wouldn't and shouldn't get any money. The big question is banks, but under the law, they don't need to be given an extra bailout. I mean, actually, it's not just Nigel Farage, but Keir Starmer in 2020, when he ran for Labour leader, said that there should be common ownership of water, amongst other things. And that's a pledge which has sort of gone away because the Treasury is saying it would just cost too much to have public ownership. But really, if people want to look at the People's Commission report that just came out recently as well, we reviewed water ownership models around the world. We looked at how the law works. And actually, public ownership of a failed water company like Thames Water would cost close to zero for the taxpayer. But as I say, save £22 billion in privatisation costs over the next 5 years if we did it with Thames and also all the other failing water companies in England.
OK, Professor Ewan McGahey, really interesting to get your perspective and your response to that report out today and those 88 recommendations trying to address the crisis the sector is in. Really good to talk to you. Thank you. Now, the 10-year-old boy who died in a coach crash in Somerset last week has been named today by police. He was Oliver Price. Police say 2 children and 3 adults remain in hospital today following that crash that happened in Minehead on Thursday. The coach overturned while carrying more than 60 pupils back from a trip to Exmoor Zoo. Emma Birchley has been following another story for us that we're going to talk about now. Let's talk about unlicensed laughing gas. A driver who inhaled nitrous oxide before and after killing an 81-year-old cyclist has been detained for more than 11 years. Graham Slynn had dismounted at a pedestrian crossing when he was hit by 20-year-old Kane Burns' car. And as I said, Emma Birchley is here to cover this story for us. And laughing gas behind the wheel, it is a topic we have covered here on the UK Tonight a number of times. Talk to me about this particular tragic incident.
I mean, it really is quite astonishing. So Graham Slynn has been described by his family as kind to the core. He loved riding his bike. And that day he'd been on a bike ride, he'd dismounted, he was crossing the road. The lights should have said stop for the drivers. Kane Byrne completely ignored it. He was driving, according to witnesses, at close to 80 miles an hour in a 50-mile-an-hour zone. Now, here you can see that's the point where he had already hit Mr. Slynn. He's now weaving through the traffic. But actually, what is most astonishing about this is that he had been using nitrous oxide. You can see there he has got a balloon in front of his face. He is driving a car, inhaling this both before and after the incident. This is a man who had 2 passengers in his car. He didn't have a driving licence. He was eventually tracked down. The police knocked down his door and he was then taken into custody. He had already admitted causing death by dangerous driving and various other charges. Sentencing was delayed because the judge said he was astonished and appalled by his driving record. He had 27 previous convictions, including dangerous driving, despite not having a licence. And sentencing him today, the judge, Jeremy Richardson, KC, he sentenced him to 11 years and 6 months, and this is what he had to say.
You are impulsive and have ingrained criminal characteristics. You take immense risks with your own state of mind and health, as well as the safety of others. In April 2025, you killed an 81-year-old man who was crossing the road. You have wrecked the life of his family. You are a dangerous offender. The public must be protected from your deviant, dangerous, and ingrained criminal behaviour.
Graham and his wife had been married nearly 60 years. They were about to have their wedding anniversary. He was a grandfather with 2 teenage granddaughters. He was a man who helped care for adults with learning disabilities. The loss is absolutely immense. This is what his daughter, Nicola Timmis, had to say after the sentencing.
Nothing that anybody does, no sentence that anybody serves will ever bring him back. Of course it won't, but it does mean that somebody who's a danger to the public is not a danger to the public for some considerable time. The people that we really, really want to thank are the people who stopped, who did stop at the scene, who tried to help my dad, and to the person who stayed with my dad until his very, very end.
You know, what's so sad, Sarah-Jane, about this is that something we heard in court after the sentencing from the police and from the family is that this was a death that was entirely avoidable.
Emma, thank you. Emma Birchley, with that really upsetting case. Thank you so much. Thank you. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. A national inquiry is announced to uncover the truth behind the Battle of Orgreave, 40 years after the violent clashes during the miners' strike. The Royal Navy warship discovered more than 100 years after it was sunk by a German submarine. And we'll be crossing to Switzerland as the Lioness is prepared to take on Italy in the semi-finals of the Women's Euros.
1, 2, 3. Say,
These Southern boys are fixing critters.
This is the first Peacock microchip.
You don't see many axolotls from everywhere. And there's no place they'd rather be.
Hey, what's been going on?
Pretty big boys there.
Hakuna Matata. Animals will find a way to get injured. How do you eat a whole sock?
The craziest ones find their way to critter fix it. Hey, let the journey continue. Appreciate you.
Brand new Critter Fixers start Sunday the 10th of August on Wild.
Now, England's Lionesses will try to take another step towards defending their Euros crown tomorrow night. They face Italy in the semi-finals in a match that has been overshadowed somewhat by the racist abuse directed at England's Jess Carter. Our sports presenter, Jackie Beltrao, joins me now from Switzerland. Hi there, Jackie. So much to talk about on the pitch, but unfortunately, events off the pitch and racism on social media seems to be overshadowing this stage of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. The last press conference before that match against Italy tomorrow night, the semi-finals, match day -1. You'd have thought all the questions would be about who you're picking, is everybody fit? But no, it was mostly about the racism row concerning Jess Carter, who had a bit of a bad day at the office against Sweden and then received a lot of racist abuse on her social media, particularly on her messaging. She's taken down her social media. An official complaint has been made by the Lionesses to the UK Football Police Unit, and they say they're investigating. So all of the questioning at the start of the press conference was about whether she might take her out of the firing line and about how together they were over this subject. Rob Harris was in that press conference and sent this report.
Jess Carter back in training with the Lionesses after revealing the pain of being racially abused on social media during the Euros, telling her manager she's still determined to be part of the semi-final with Italy.
Although it's a hard situation, Jess is a very strong person and she wants to move on too. She's ready to perform and to compete. And that says also a lot about her and about the team.
A team focused on defending their Euros crown. Frustrated, they're also having to take on a bigger mission while determined to do so.
I think the most important thing is Jess has the power to be able to do that, and she doesn't have the power on her own. She has the power of the Lionesses, of us as players, as staff, as the whole of the FA. So it might sound like one person is fighting this battle, but you never know how many people are actually behind her and stand with her. And I think that's the beauty of football, is if we want to make change, we can do it as a collective, and as a collective we're way more powerful.
And on a day an independent regulator for football was introduced into law, the Culture Secretary telling me it's time for the communications regulator to act on online hate.
We're considering as a government what more we can do to protect women players. But we've also introduced new laws so that platforms are under a legal obligation to take down that sort of disgusting content immediately. And they can be pursued through fines, through Ofcom, if they don't do it.
The UK Football Policing Unit says it is trying to identify those responsible for the racist posts while working with Carter's family and the social media firms who have yet to comment. More vocal, fans arriving in Geneva for the match. Furious, a star of the team is facing abuse.
This is football. It's not about race, it's not about anything. It's about football. And yeah, people have good experiences on the pitch, bad experiences from a performance perspective, but 100% why people being raised into it is totally unacceptable.
Why are you going to follow a team around and give hate like that?
There's no place for it whatsoever in football in the world. Yeah. No, it's not on.
This has been a tournament of challenges for the European champions. Fightbacks on the pitch, fighting to clean up society off it. Their shared purpose now fuelling the push to reach a third consecutive final. Rob Harris, Sky News, Geneva.
Well, let's refocus on the football, shall we, Jackie? Because that's what the Lionesses want to do. Only Italy now standing between England and a third consecutive major tournament final. What kind of threat are they going to pose tomorrow night, Jackie?
Well, the fact that they are in the semi-finals means they are a threat. They found scoring quite easy so far, scoring early in their matches as well. And, you know, a credit to Italy, they've only had professional women's football in their country for 3 years. So in 3 years, they've come an awfully long way. And, you know, they are not going to be underestimated by the Lionesses. In fact, Serena Wiegmann said, you know, we can't talk about being favourites going into this game. It's disrespectful to Italy to think of ourselves as favourites. Complacency is the biggest mistake we could make. And it's going to be difficult. And you have to say England are very lucky to be in this position, given how the match went against Sweden. You know, no team in the history of this competition has gone through having missed 3 consecutive penalties. It is the worst penalty shootout in the history of the Women's Euros, and yet England are through somehow to the semi-finals. It's been a real roller coaster of emotions. It's been a roller coaster of performances, good, bad, indifferent. And when Georgia Stanway was asked in the press conference, because she really likes a tattoo, does Georgia Stanway, if she had a tattoo to sum up these championships, what would it be? And she said roller coaster. So you sort of feel that England should be the favourites, given that they have beaten Italy many times, including the last 4 times, including in February when they beat them 5-1. You'd have thought they would be the favourites, but Italy have found scoring goals quite easy. It's really come together for them in this tournament. They are the dark horses, and they will not be underestimated by these Lionesses.
Jackie, thank you. Looking forward to that match tomorrow night. Jackie Beltrao out in Geneva for us here on Sky News. As does come on the UK tonight, the Royal Navy warship discovered more than 100 years after it was sunk by a German U-boat. Hello, welcome back. Now, the Home Secretary says a new public inquiry will uncover the truth behind the so-called Battle of Orgreave, a violent confrontation that took place between police and striking miners in the 1980s. In the aftermath, the miners were blamed in what campaigners believe was an institutional frame-up. Our North of England correspondent Katerina Vitozzi has this report.
Violence, lies, and a decades-long pursuit for the truth. The Battle of Orgreave was far more than just a miners' fight. It was a day of bloodshed that changed this South Yorkshire community and affected trust in the police for years.
The strikers' blockade of Orgreave was a precisely planned operation.
News reports from the day show how 5,000 miners, part of nationwide strikes, clashed with armed and mounted police in the town of Orgreave. Miners said police used excessive force and planned violence against them. Chris Skidmore and Carl Parkinson were there.
But it weren't just one truncheon, there might have been 30 or 40, all simultaneous. It was though it were like orchestrated military, you know what I mean? It was just like boom, 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 and they'd come back. So obviously these lads just got splits down there, that sticks with you, because they're like, blooming heck, what's that for? They done no wrong. Only thing they were there for was just to peacefully protest and picket.
More than 100 people were hurt, but in the aftermath it was the miners who were blamed in media reporting.
Mass picketing had turned to rioting.
And by the police. Dozens of miners were arrested, only for cases to be dropped amid accusations of unreliable police evidence.
If you have been lied about by the government, if that's shown on the news and you feel that this is all untrue what is being said, you will never stop fighting to clear your name.
For years, campaigners have called for a public inquiry. Today, they finally got one.
When we were elected to government, we were determined to take this forward, to make sure that we can have this inquiry, that those who've campaigned for this for such a long time can get the truth, can get proper answers about what happened.
Because this is a statutory inquiry, witnesses will be compelled to come and give evidence. Documents previously unseen will be unearthed for the very first time, because what campaigners hope to find out from this is not only what happened on the day here in 1984, but what led up to it, and crucially, what happened afterwards. And in the course of that will be questions for South Yorkshire Police, who've never admitted wrongdoing.
We need to see trust and confidence restored in the police, and part of that is about people like this campaign getting the justice that they deserve. Obviously, we've had things like Hillsborough, CSE in South Yorkshire, and we want to turn the page. We want to show people that actually the police are an integral part of our community, a trusted part of our community, but that requires truth and justice, and that's what this campaign has been calling for all these years.
The Home Secretary has told campaigners this inquiry will uncover what happened after decades of blame and false accusations. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News in South Yorkshire.
Now, divers have discovered the wreck of a Royal Navy warship 110 years after it was first sunk in the First World War. The HMS Nottingham was hit by 3 torpedoes fired by a German U-boat on the 19th of August 1916. The captain, 20 officers and 357 crew were rescued, but 38 British sailors died, many of them just teenagers. Well, there have been numerous attempts to locate the ship's final resting place. The wreck had remained elusive until now. And I'm joined in the studio tonight by 2 of the divers who were the first to see that ship underwater, Dan McMullen and Leo Fielding, who are from Project Explore. Gentlemen, good to have you in the studio this evening. First of all, congratulations, because many teams have tried to discover this for the best part of a quarter of a century. Dan, can you just give me your reaction, well, both of you, when you first saw it underwater, because you were the first 2 to clap eyes on it?
Yeah, I guess when we were going down that trot line, there was a lot of anxiety and apprehension. However, once the wreck come into view, you know, there was just a real connection to the history of the wreck, the sailors that lost their lives there. It was a super exciting moment for myself.
Yeah, and Leo, it was a culmination of 7 months of research and planning in trying to locate this. And as I said, many teams have tried to do it before. How did you guys actually crack it and find out where it was?
So we followed a 3-step process. First of all, we dived into the archives and we looked up the ship's logs, the telegrams, pored over charts of the movements of the vessels. And we had 2 of our researchers are actually native German speakers, so they were able to go into the German records. So we had both the British records and the German records to look at. That's step 1. Step 2 was using what's called a side scan sonar, which is underwater search equipment that can create images of the seabed to actually look for the wreck on the seabed. And then the 3rd stage was assembling a team of project divers to go down and see it for themselves.
Because you guys do this as a hobby, this isn't your full-time gig, and Dan Lee has explained all the planning that goes into it. That final stage, diving down to the seabed where you think the shipwreck is, to find it, you know, like I said, so many have tried before. It's quite something to pull off. Just describe to people, you know, the magnitude of this discovery.
Yeah, I mean, any diving to this level, especially when it's exposed this far offshore, there can be a multitude of things that go wrong.
Because how far down is it?
It was 85 metres to the seabed.
85 metres.
But yeah, I guess, you know, having the right tools for the job, the right planning beforehand, I think is really important. And I think having a close-knit team also, you know, really comes into its own doing this sort of diving.
Leah, perhaps you can tell us a bit about HMS Nottingham and its involvement in the Second World War, because it was one of the last warships to be sunk in the conflict. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So it was sunk in one of the really pivotal battles of the First World War. And the day before the battle, British intelligence captured information that the entire German fleet was putting to sea that night with a plan to bombard Sunderland. And so the battleships sortied from Scapa Flow and the British battle cruisers came out of Rosyth essentially to intercept them. But what they didn't know was that there was an ambush of German submarines that was waiting for them, a series of ambushes. And unfortunately, that's how HMS Nottingham was sunk by a German torpedo.
Yeah, we know a lot about what happened because there were hundreds of survivors. Sadly, a number of sailors lost their lives. When you found the wreckage, I mean, just looking from those pictures, you know, I don't know much about shipwrecks, but it seems pretty intact. What was the state of the wreck, considering it's been down there for over 100 years?
Yeah, so the wreck site itself, I mean, personally, I was really impressed with sort of the preservation. I think there's a number of factors that like sort of play a role in that. And it's one, the depth.
Are they plates?
Yeah, they're plates. So they bear the Royal Admiralty emblem on the plates, and they were typically found in the officers' mess on the wreck.
So you found crockery down there that was intact after all this
Yeah, and
time?
I think the depth really plays a part in that as well, because storms pass overhead and the depth sort of protects it, and there's huge differences in temperature as well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot colder down there.
Yeah. It looks so eerie. What's it like to be down there and discover the shipwreck? You are the first men to be near or around that ship in over 100 years. It must have been quite the experience.
Yeah, I think you feel very connected to the sailors themselves.
Yeah.
You know, you're looking at the decking. The timber decking is still in place, and you can see the texture of the wood because, as Dan was saying, it's so well preserved. And you put yourself in the shoes of the sailors to some extent. You think, what were they feeling? Were they frightened when they were under attack? How did they deal with that?
It's incredible, you know, just from crockery to the timber being intact and everything that you saw down there. What happens now, Dan, in terms of, you know, you've made this discovery, there's so much history attached to it, so many families that will be affected by this, who either lost loved ones or who had loved ones who survived that sinking. What happens now? So
I guess what happens now is we would love to go back with another team of divers to do some more documentation on the wreck. After that, we would like to sort of move on to another target as well. So we've got a few targets that we're looking for around the British Isles.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we'll see.
So you're going to go again. What else you're looking for, can you say?
No.
No? Just in case somebody beats you to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, you know, you have beat, you know, many teams who've been searching for this for over 100 years. Congratulations to you, Dan and Leo, the first divers to see that wreck underwater, HMS Nottingham, that they were looking for. We have got a response from the Royal Navy because, of course, you reported your find to the Royal Navy. It is still very much their ship. This is what a spokesperson for the Royal Navy had to say. They said, "We appreciate the efforts to locate the wreck of HMS Nottingham. The Ministry of Defence, along with additional subject matter experts, will now consider the evidence received in line with policy before formally identifying the wreck." Dan McMullen and Leo Fielding from Project Explore. Thank you so much for coming in to tell us about your discovery. It's
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Still to come on the UK tonight, why passengers flying Ryanair may want to double-check their baggage allowance. Plus, how Marcus Rashford could be on the verge of his dream move. All the details on the way.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Suitcase wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against, that the wind is the really big problems. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, why you might want to double-check your baggage allowance before flying Ryanair. You don't want to get caught out. But first, Mark is here with the sport, and we're talking about Marcus Rashford. Mark, on the verge of his dream move, we understand. Tell us more.
Yes, a really big move for Marcus Rashford, isn't it? And it is edging ever closer, this move to Barcelona. The medical is done. He flew into the Spanish city yesterday, and it's going to be a loan move, so not a permanent one, but there is the option to make this deal permanent if it all goes well for all parties. Sky Sports News understand it'll be around about £26 million if the deal is made permanent at the end of next season. Crucially, his wages are going to be covered as well. Now, you might think, well, is that significant? Well, when your wages are north of £300,000 a week, it is significant, and clearly it gives Manchester United and Ruben Amorim freedom to refresh his own squad, because it hasn't really worked out for Amorim and Rashford. That partnership just hasn't worked, so Rashford needs this fresh start.
Yeah, Marcus Rashford's such a household name. He transcends sport, doesn't he, because, of course, of what he's done for free school meals. But for those who haven't been following his career on the pitch intricately, why this move? Why now? Is this because he wants to improve his chances of an England call-up? What's the thinking behind it?
It's a really big time, isn't it, when you consider he'll be going into a World Cup year next year in the US. Of course, he wants to be on the plane. He wants to be in Thomas Tuchel's squad. He's still very much on Tuchel's radar, the England head coach. He played from only back in March, 62 caps for his country. When you consider he's only 27 years of age, as you mentioned there, what he's achieved, he's been around for a long time, but he needs this move. He's been frozen out at Manchester United under Ruben Amorim. Amorim's questioned, Rashford's attitude at times, even suggesting at one stage, Sarah-Jane, that he'd rather put his 63-year-old goalkeeping coach on the bench rather than Rashford. When that happens, you think, look, it's time to move on. But what an opportunity. Not too many players will think, look, frozen out at Man United, loan spell at Aston Villa, And then you rock up at Barcelona, the Spanish champions. So what a chance for him now to do well at Barcelona and to be in the World Cup squad next summer. So exciting times for Rashford, and we can check on the rest of the sport now.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last year and a half or 2 years, and they're taking their toll on my head at times.
Sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of virtual soccer schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world. And utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now, if you have ever pushed your luck with the size of your luggage at the airport, you may want to take extra care if you're flying with Ryanair this summer. The airline has confirmed that it actually pays staff a bonus for catching passengers with oversized luggage. Currently £1.30 a bag. It's reportedly capped for staff at £70 per month. What's more, Ryanair's boss says he's thinking of increasing this bonus to staff to eliminate what he calls the scourge of excess baggage. Well, you never know what you're going to need, Michael O'Leary. You've got to pack at least 4 outfits a day. You never know what the weather's going to do. Well, let's speak to Lisa Minnow, travel editor of The Sun. Lisa, I bet you're well versed in this. The amount of travelling you do, I bet you push your luck.
I definitely do push my luck, and I really have struggled at times to get all of my luggage into a suitcase. You're quite right.
Yeah, is this commonplace? Airlines paying their staff a bonus for essentially catching people like you and I, because I do it as well, who are taking, it's mainly cabin bags, isn't it? Because a lot of people get a cheap flight and they think, I won't pay for hold, I'll take one of those wheelie cases on as hand luggage. And it's those people that they're targeting. Did we know that staff got bonuses for this, for catching us?
We did, and this is actually the ground handling companies, so the likes of Swissport and the companies that Ryanair use. We've already heard this in recent weeks with EasyJet, who also confirmed via an email that was sent to their ground handlers that they would also be paying an incentive to those who are catching people with the wrong size bags. Now, I can understand from the ground handler's perspective, they're going to have to talk to people, tell them their bags are going to have to go into the they're going to have to pay extra money for them. And actually, this incentive is to make sure that they feel confident enough in doing that. But at the same time, there are so many different rules, and every airline has a different set of luggage measurements. And that's why I think is really wrong. We need to be standardised across the industry, because it's no surprise we're getting caught out when Ryanair, EasyJet, Wizz Air, Jet2, everybody has a different size.
Yeah, I must admit, when I travel now, and anecdotally speaking to so many people, you turn up to fly with low-cost airlines. You know, Ryanair isn't the only one, and you think, I'm going to get stung at check-in for something, whether it's the fact that I haven't printed off my boarding pass, or whether it's because I've checked in an oversized cabin bag instead of a hold bag. You always think you're going to pay something extra at the airport. How can consumers put pressure on the industry to make it more uniform so it's easier for us to travel? Because, you know, it's good for the industry in terms of putting money into it. It's not good for people struggling with the cost of living who just want to treat themselves by going away for a week.
Well, you're exactly right. Actually, ancillary profits, so the profits from those seat reservations, from baggage, everything else, that's a really important part of airlines' profits at the moment. For Ryanair, it's gone up from 15% to 30% of their profits in the last few years. So it's important to the airlines. But at the same time, we have seen the EU push back now and say they want a standardised amount of luggage for everyone. What they're suggesting, the airlines say, is not workable. What they're suggesting is that everybody should get a hand luggage, so a piece of luggage that can go under the seat, like a handbag or a laptop bag. And then also you should be able to get a cabin bag that you can put into the overhead lockers. Airlines say this is totally unworkable because there simply isn't the room on these smaller short-haul planes to have everybody bringing 2 bags on board. Yeah. There's not enough room in the overhead bins. So there's got to be some kind of agreement between the two. But at the moment, you've got the EU on one side, you've got the airlines on the other. We're in the middle, constantly trying to work out if our bag is the right size for whatever airline we're with.
Yeah, and there's a growing industry in cheating the system, essentially. I don't know about you, but at this time of year on social media, I'm getting spammed with adverts for those suitcases that are slim-fitting, that fit just in that little pocket where you have to test it at check-in, or the vacuum pack backpacks, so you can get about 3 times as much in to go on the airline. So there is a big industry in cheating the system as well, because people, they want to save money.
Yeah, but of course the airlines are on top of those social media posts as well. So don't try to bring a pillow on board. That's probably going to get you into trouble. And make sure that your bag fits the dimensions once you've packed it. And it's very well and good having the bag fitting the dimensions before you put anything in it. The minute it expands, you're going to get in trouble.
Oh, Lisa, nothing but stress when you turn up to the airport every which way you look. Lisa Minow, travel editor of The Sun, thank you so much for talking to us tonight. Just a reminder of what Michael O'Leary, the boss of Ryanair, had to say about this. He said, we're flying largely full flights. About half the passengers can bring 2 bags and the other half can only bring 1 because that's all that fits in the plane. We're already struggling with that amount of baggage. That's one of the reasons we are so aggressive about eliminating the scourge of passengers with excess baggage. Right, let's have a quick look at the weather, shall we? It will remain unsettled for a few days yet. Further thundery downpours, but it should turn drier from Thursday onwards. Western Britain is going to be quite cloudy this evening, prolonged heavy rain in the northwest and lighter, more patchy outbreaks elsewhere. The rest of Britain can expect the odd shower, while Ireland and Northern Ireland look quite dull and damp. Western Britain will see further rain tonight, although the heavy outbreaks in the northwest will ease up. Elsewhere, most places dry, with any lingering showers largely fading before midnight. But the west of Ireland will see further showers running in. Eastern Britain may see a few fog patches developing under clearer skies. Tomorrow morning looking quite cloudy, with showers developing widely. That's it from the UK tonight. We will return tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next, it's The World with Barbara Sarah. See you tomorrow.